British colonization in 1788 was predicated on a legal fiction. Looking out at the vast, dense eucalypt forests of the Sydney Basin, the First Fleet commanders declared the continent terra nullius, land belonging to no one. They saw a wilderness awaiting discovery. In reality, those ships were arriving at a fully occupied landscape. Indigenous Australians had lived here for 65,000 years, organized into a geopolitical mosaic of 600 distinct nations, speaking roughly 250 separate languages. The AIATIS map provides a corrective to that colonial vision. Every color-coded region represents a specific nation group, like Wiradjuri, Kamilaroi, and Yolngu. This density proves every river, mountain, and desert was known and named long before European keels touched the sand. Where Europeans saw land as an asset measured by paper surveys and grid lines, indigenous groups lived by the philosophy of country. They belonged to the land through songlines, spiritual maps linking distant groups across the continent. By searching for fences and farms that didn't exist, the colonizers misread the entire continent. Their inability to recognize a different system of ownership blinded them to the sovereign society they were about to displace. Indigenous Australians functioned as sophisticated ecological engineers. They actively managed the environment through fire stick farming, a controlled burning practice refined over thousands of years. These low-intensity, cool fires cleared out undergrowth to open up hunting sightlines and encourage the growth of fresh grass. The technique was precise, allowing the heat to stay low enough that the forest canopy remained intact. This record of a controlled burn shows the reality of land stewardship. This wasn't a random act, but a deliberate method to reduce fuel loads and prevent the catastrophic wildfires that plague the continent today. Over millennia, this consistent management transformed thick forests into the open, park-like savannas that early explorers found so appealing. The dense, fire-prone bushland seen across modern Australia is a direct result of the cessation of these indigenous practices. The untouched wilderness described in early colonial journals was a human-made landscape, actively engineered and maintained for 60 millennia. Early settlers struggled with colonial estrangement, a psychological state where they found themselves unable to accurately perceive or depict their new home. Thomas Watling produced this 1794 view of Sydney Cove. Look at the trees. He gave native eucalypts the lush foliage of European oaks, bathing the scene in soft English light. He was imposing a British aesthetic onto an Australian reality. This failure to see the land as it actually was led directly to the failure of European crops and the catastrophic mismanagement of the soil. As the colony expanded, the competition for land fueled the frontier wars. Indigenous groups utilized guerrilla tactics to defend their country, led by resistance figures like the Bidjigal warrior Pemulwuy. In Van Diemen's Land, the conflict escalated into the Black War. In 1830, Governor George Arthur launched the Black Line, a military operation involving 2,200 men forming a human chain to forcibly clear the Aboriginal population from the settled districts. During this violence, the colonial state produced Governor Arthur's Proclamation Board, using pictograms to explain British law. The upper panels depict a promise of harmony. We see settlers and Aboriginal people walking together, and a formal handshake implying equality and a shared social contract. The historical reality was far grimmer. The boards were distributed while martial law was in effect, a period when settlers were effectively immune from prosecution for the killing of Indigenous people. The board functioned as propaganda, preaching British justice to the public, while the state facilitated systematic dispossession on the ground. By the 20th century, the visual messaging of the state shifted from painting false harmony to projecting existential fear. During World War I, Norman Lindsay produced this recruiting poster, departing from early noble adventure themes. He depicted the enemy as a subhuman beast. This ape-like monster in a German helmet reaches over the globe with blood-drenched hands, clawing directly at the Australian continent. This imagery mobilized deep-seated racial anxieties. By depicting the German enemy as a monstrous invader, the poster leveraged the existing Yellow Peril fears, the 19th century colonial obsession with a looming Asian invasion. This desperate projection reveals a deep psychological insecurity. The persistent fear of being invaded from the sea deeply haunted a society built on a violently stolen landscape. The visual history of the continent functions as a palimpsest, a canvas where new stories are written over old ones without ever truly erasing the layers beneath. For over 2 centuries, the British Empire tried to overwrite the landscape, laying grid lines over song lines and European aesthetics over native ecologies. Despite these aggressive overlays, the foundational indigenous reality of the land remained. The sovereign mosaic survived the colonial paint. Understanding modern Australia requires looking past the colonial surveyor's lines to recognize the deep-time reality beneath.